The Galactic Empire, once the uncontested ruler of the galaxy, was a behemoth of strength and technology. For millennia, it had expanded its reach, crushing all resistance in its wake. Alien species from countless worlds had been absorbed into its vast bureaucratic machine, each enslaved or pacified by its superior technology and relentless authority. The Empire's fleets stretched across the stars, its command centers humming with activity as its armies prepared for new campaigns. Every species under its dominion had learned to fear its reach, and those few rebellious factions were either eradicated or made to bend the knee. Yet, amidst the wealth of this technological marvel, there was an ancient mystery, a secret that few knew of, and even fewer dared to speak of. Humanity. The human race had once been a major player in galactic history, a species of explorers, dreamers, and conquerors. But that had been before the Great Expanse War, an event that had shattered humanity's power and sent them into near extinction. The Empire, in its early years, had ruthlessly wiped out humanity's last strongholds, scattering the remnants of the human race to the farthest corners of the galaxy. It was believed that humanity had been eradicated, lost to time and history. But that was a lie. A signal, cryptic and jagged, had made its way through the vast network of the Empire's communications. At first, it seemed to be a mistake, a relic of a bygone era, a distress signal too old to be of any significance. But when the signal was decoded, the message it bore struck like a thunderclap. Humanity is coming. Prepare for extinction. At first, the Empire's high command dismissed the transmission as an anomaly, an ancient message left behind by the last remnants of a forgotten race. It was treated as nothing more than a failed communication from a species that had long been eradicated. After all, the Empire's technology was unparalleled, its defenses impregnable. The idea that a species, particularly one believed to be dead, could pose a threat to the Empire's dominance was unthinkable. But the signal persisted, growing stronger with each passing day. The enigmatic message wasn't just a simple broadcast, it was a challenge. It held a signature, a unique frequency pattern, that matched no known species. And yet, it bore an undeniable human signature. A chill ran down the spine of the Empire's commanders when the truth became unavoidable. Humanity had survived. Humanity had not only survived, it had flourished. While the Empire had believed humanity to be nothing more than a footnote in galactic history, the humans had been busy, hiding in the forgotten corners of the galaxy, cultivating knowledge, and developing technologies far beyond what anyone could have imagined. The once fragile human race had spent centuries in isolation, far from the Empire's reach, perfecting the very things that would now make them a deadly force. The hidden human fleet was vast, beyond the comprehension of the Empire's intelligence. The ships were unlike anything the Empire had ever encountered. They were immense, capable of manipulating quantum fields to warp space itself, rendering them nearly invisible to all forms of detection. Each ship was equipped with weapons that defied conventional physics, weapons capable of tearing apart entire star systems with a single shot, weapons that could bend the very fabric of spacetime. It was no longer a fleet of mere ships. It was an army of titans, each one an apex of human ingenuity, every ship a testament to the survival instincts of a species that had fought for its life. And yet, it was not just the ships or their weapons that made humanity a threat. It was their will to survive. The Empire had long prided itself on its vast bureaucratic structure and its ability to quash resistance through sheer power. But humanity, in the face of extinction, had learned to adapt, to evolve in ways that no other species could. They had learned to fight with precision, to use every resource at their disposal to strike at their enemies. There was no hesitation, no fear. Just a single, overwhelming drive to survive. It was a trait the Empire had never anticipated in the species it had long considered inferior. The Galactic Empire, accustomed to unchallenged superiority, found itself at a crossroads. The High Command was now faced with the realization that they had underestimated humanity. Their fleets were more than a match for any species that had dared oppose them, but now, they faced an unknown force, a force born from the remnants of a dead race, one that had learned, grown, and waited. And now, the time for waiting was over. The message had been clear. Humanity is coming. And they were not coming to beg for mercy. They were coming to reclaim their place in the stars. The Empire, once an unstoppable juggernaut, was about to learn a bitter lesson. The leadership of the Empire scrambled to respond. A sense of unease spread through the high command as the full implications of the situation began to sink in. Humanity, thought to be extinct for centuries, had returned with a vengeance. Their ships, cloaked in the fabric of space itself, began appearing from hidden sectors, emerging from the void where no one had thought to look. The Empire's fleets, poised to expand their control even further, now found themselves on the defensive. Every attempt to locate and neutralize the human fleet was met with failure. Their ships appeared out of nowhere, striking with devastating precision, and then disappearing back into the shadows. The situation grew more dire with each passing day. Entire sectors of the Empire were suddenly cut off, their fleets decimated in brutal, unexpected attacks. What was once an unstoppable force was now struggling to contain a threat it could not understand. The Galactic Empire's vast military, once feared by every species in the galaxy, was facing a force that did not operate by the same rules. And the humans, though they were outnumbered, had something the Empire did not: the will to fight, to survive, and to dominate. As the Empire's leaders convened to formulate a strategy, one thing became abundantly clear: the fate of the galaxy would no longer be decided by fleets or weapons alone. This was a battle of ideals, a struggle not just for control of space, but for the future of all sentient life. And humanity's return had shattered the Empire's carefully constructed illusions of invincibility. The stakes had been raised. The Empire could no longer afford to ignore the challenge that humanity posed. The battle for the galaxy had just begun. And for the first time in millennia, the Empire found itself fighting not just to conquer, but to survive. Humanity, it seemed, had returned not to reclaim the past, but to rewrite the future. The Galactic Empire, vast and impenetrable, was in chaos. Its leadership, so certain of its eternal dominance, had been thrown into turmoil. Humanity, once considered a relic of a forgotten era, had returned from the shadows, and with them came a power the Empire could not understand. For centuries, the Empire had boasted the most advanced technology in the galaxy. But now they were confronted with an enemy that didn't just wield superior firepower, they manipulated the very fabric of reality itself. The Empire had quickly mobilized its fleet, sending its finest generals and admirals to confront the mysterious human fleet, but the results were disastrous. Humanity's ships warped space around them, making detection near impossible. Even the Empire's most advanced sensor systems could not track them. The humans were everywhere and nowhere at once, appearing in places where they shouldn't have been, striking with surgical precision before vanishing into the void. Each battle felt like a lesson in humiliation for the Empire. Their fleets, despite being far larger and better equipped, were being torn apart one by one, unable to match the human fleet's advanced technologies and superior tactics. The Empire's leaders were now at a crossroads. The once unassailable military power, the force that had kept the galaxy in check for millennia, was struggling against a foe it couldn't comprehend. The humans had become like ghosts in the stars, slipping through the cracks of the Empire's defense, engaging in asymmetrical warfare that left entire fleets decimated without a trace. The Empire's most seasoned tacticians, who had crushed civilizations with ease, now found themselves scrambling for a solution. Desperation began to set in as the human fleet's power became undeniable. The ships, each a marvel of human ingenuity, possessed weapons that tore through space itself. Weapons that collapsed entire planetary systems with ease, leaving behind only the vacuum of space where thriving colonies once existed. And yet, it wasn't just the weapons that proved dangerous. It was the way humanity fought. Their tactics were unorthodox, almost animalistic in their relentlessness. While the Empire relied on brute force and overwhelming numbers, humanity fought with the precision of a predator, targeting weaknesses with unmatched focus. In a war of attrition, the Empire would have the upper hand. But humanity didn't seek to win by numbers, they sought to win by principle. Every strike they made wasn't just to defeat the Empire, it was to expose the cracks in its dominance. It was to remind the galaxy that it wasn't the technology or size of a fleet that mattered, it was the spirit behind it. And the human spirit, that was something the Empire had never accounted for. As the human fleet advanced further into Imperial space, the High Command began to understand that their fleets, their bureaucracies, their legions of foot soldiers, it all meant nothing in the face of an enemy who was willing to destroy the galaxy to save themselves. The humans weren't just fighting for survival, they were fighting for the future, for a new order where they no longer had to cower in the shadows. And the Empire, in all its arrogance, had failed to recognize the one thing that made humanity dangerous above all else: their will to endure. In the heart of the Empire's capital, the Council convened to discuss their next steps. It was clear now that this was not a threat that could be crushed by military might alone. No amount of reinforcements, no fleet of warships, would be enough to overpower the relentless tide of humanity's advances. If they were to survive, they would need to understand the true nature of the human threat. Among the Empire's top generals, a new strategy began to take shape, an attempt to match the humans' unpredictable tactics with their own form of unpredictability. The idea was simple: to create a weapon more powerful than anything the humans had encountered before. But the time for conventional warfare was quickly running out. The Empire was running out of options, and the more they fought, the more they realized that humanity was not just a threat to their reign, it was a revolution in the making. And as the conflict continued, a deeper truth began to emerge: humanity's rise was not a fluke. It wasn't just technology or luck that had brought them to this point. It was the resilience that had defined the species since its earliest days. Humanity had survived against all odds in the past, from the collapse of their homeworld to the very wars that had once nearly wiped them from existence. They had rebuilt. They had adapted. They had learned to thrive under impossible circumstances. The humans, for all their technological advances, understood one thing above all else: survival was a matter of principle, not just power. The Empire, for all its might and machinery, was a creation of bureaucratic design, a faceless entity that crushed individualism beneath the weight of its own endless expansion. It was a system that relied on conformity, on obedience, on the idea that strength lay in numbers. But humanity was not bound by these principles. They were not a race that could be caged, and they were not a species that could simply fade into oblivion. They had learned to fight, not just for dominance, but for freedom, freedom to exist on their own terms. The revelations hit the Empire like a tidal wave. The same overconfidence that had led them to dismiss humanity as an irrelevant species had now become their greatest vulnerability. Humanity's return was not just an act of defiance, it was a statement of intent. The very existence of the Empire had been called into question, and humanity would not stop until they had reclaimed their rightful place in the stars. In the days that followed, the humans intensified their strikes, dismantling Imperial infrastructure piece by piece, forcing the Empire to retreat from key systems. Yet it wasn't just about the war anymore. As each battle passed, as each skirmish grew more desperate, the Empire began to realize that this was not just a war for territory or power. It was a war for survival. A war that would determine whether the Empire would continue its centuries-long reign or whether humanity would rewrite the rules of the galaxy entirely. The humans were not just fighting to overthrow an empire. They were fighting for a future where they would no longer be subjugated, where they would no longer be cowered beneath the weight of an imperial power that had ruled the galaxy for far too long. The Empire had underestimated them, and now, as their fleets crumbled and their worlds fell into chaos, the Empire understood the full magnitude of the threat humanity posed. The message that had started it all, the cryptic signal, the challenge to the Empire, had been clear. Humanity was not just coming back to reclaim what was theirs. They were coming to destroy the Empire's grip on the galaxy once and for all. And nothing, not even the full might of the Empire, could stop them now. The final race for control of the central nexus was underway. Both sides understood its significance. This location, hidden in the deep expanse of the galaxy, was the key to unimaginable power. It had once been thought a myth, a legend passed down among ancient races, and even the Galactic Empire had dismissed it as mere folklore. But now, with humanity's unexpected resurgence, it had become the focal point of an all-out war that would determine the fate of the galaxy. The central nexus, located on the fringes of known space, was a place of untold potential. It was said to be a convergence point of dimensions, a space where the rules of physics as the galaxy knew them did not apply. Some believed it was the source of the ancient human technology that had been rediscovered and now powered humanity's fleet, technology that bent space and time, creating weapons capable of annihilating entire star systems. But the true nature of the Nexus was still a mystery, one that both the Empire and humanity were racing to uncover. The Galactic Empire had dispatched its most advanced fleets, including the elite First Fleet, to secure the Nexus and protect their empire's future. They had sent their brightest commanders, armed with every tactical advantage the Empire could muster. But the humans, relentless and resourceful, were not merely fighting to survive, they were fighting to rewrite the future of the galaxy. Humanity had infiltrated Imperial space using methods that were beyond the Empire's comprehension. Their ships, equipped with the technology of reality manipulation, could phase in and out of existence, allowing them to bypass entire fleets. The Empire's fleet, despite its immense size and firepower, had become a target of humanity's perfected guerrilla tactics. Humanity didn't fight like an empire, they fought like a band of survivors, determined to strike at the heart of the galaxy's most powerful institution. As humanity's fleet arrived at the central nexus, the Empire's commanders grew frantic. They had anticipated that the humans would eventually make their way here, but the sheer scale of the threat was something no one had foreseen. The Nexus, the key to bending space-time, was a potential game-changer for both sides. Whoever controlled it would have the power to reshape the galaxy according to their own desires. It was not simply a matter of military victory, it was a matter of existence. If the humans gained control of the Nexus, the Empire's centuries-long dominance would be at an end. If the Empire secured it, they would be able to tighten their grip on the galaxy for millennia to come. Humanity, however, was not going to simply claim the Nexus for their own empire. The question of what to do with such immense power was a growing concern. Some of the human leadership, including a few key commanders, had grown obsessed with the idea of using the Nexus to obliterate the Empire once and for all. They saw it as the perfect opportunity for revenge, an end to the centuries of subjugation, an end to the imperial oppression that had nearly wiped out humanity's ancestors. But not all of humanity's leaders agreed. Others, like the protagonist of this story, believed that the true danger was not in the war, but in the unchecked power that the Nexus represented. The power to alter reality itself could be the galaxy's salvation, or its doom. In secret meetings among the human fleet, the discussions were heated. Some advocated for using the Nexus as a weapon to destroy the Empire. They argued that the Empire had caused enough pain, enough suffering, and that this was humanity's chance to erase it once and for all. But others, more cautious, feared that using such power would make humanity no better than the Empire they sought to overthrow. The risks were too great. What if they destroyed not just the Empire but the very fabric of space-time itself? The protagonist, a brilliant yet disillusioned commander who had once believed in the nobility of their cause, found himself torn. The war had taken its toll, and the consequences of using the Nexus seemed far too perilous. There had to be another way, another path toward peace, one that didn't require such overwhelming destruction. But as the situation grew more dire, and the human fleet closed in on the Nexus, the reality of their choices became impossible to ignore. Meanwhile, the Empire's forces, desperate to maintain control, had begun using their own form of manipulation. They had deployed their own quantum-weaponized fleet, a force equipped with the latest in reality-bending technologies. Their strategy was clear: they would overwhelm the humans, use their superior numbers to seize the Nexus, and destroy anything that stood in their way. But the human fleet was not merely a collection of ships, it was an embodiment of human spirit, of ingenuity, of survival. Every ship in the fleet was a testament to the relentless will of humanity to endure against impossible odds. Each commander, each soldier, fought not just for victory, but for the future of their people. As the fleets converged on the Nexus, space itself began to warp. The gravitational forces around the Nexus fluctuated, bending in ways that made it increasingly difficult for both sides to maintain their positions. Ships from both fleets found themselves being pulled into strange, unexplained dimensions, only to reappear moments later in different parts of the battlefield. Time seemed to stretch and compress, and in the heart of it all, the Nexus pulsed with an energy that defied all known laws of physics. For the first time in the history of the Galactic Empire, the concept of control began to slip from its grasp. The Empire's commanders, who had once relied on unyielding order and precision, found themselves scrambling to adapt to a battlefield where the rules of warfare no longer applied. Meanwhile, humanity's fleet, while disorganized and chaotic, was thriving in this new environment. Their ships, designed with the understanding that survival meant adaptability, were the perfect vessels for this distorted battlefield. They could bend with the chaos, shifting tactics in real time, exploiting the anomalies in space to their advantage. The Empire's fleets began to falter. The once mighty Imperial forces, with their overwhelming firepower and technological superiority, were beginning to crumble. Humanity's guerrilla tactics were proving more effective than anyone had anticipated. As the battle raged on, the war for the Nexus had become less about technology and more about principle. It was no longer a question of who had the better ships or the superior weaponry. It was a question of who had the will to survive. Amid the chaos, the human fleet commander, standing at the helm of their flagship, made a decision that would change everything. They would not use the Nexus as a weapon. Instead, they would destroy it, ensuring that no one, either the Empire nor humanity, would ever wield such power again. The choice was difficult, and it was fraught with consequences, but in the end, it was the only choice that seemed right. The Nexus, with all its promise of godlike power, could never be allowed to fall into the hands of a single empire, no matter how just or oppressive. The command was given. The human fleet's final strike began, one last gamble to save the galaxy from destruction. As the ships closed in on the Nexus, the Empire's remaining forces attempted to counterattack, but it was too late. The Nexus, with all its reality-warping potential, was destroyed in a flash of light that echoed through the very fabric of space-time. For a brief moment, the galaxy held its breath, and then, silence. The war was over. The Empire was no more. But humanity, in the wake of their victory, was left to face the consequences of their choice. They had stopped the Empire, but they had also ensured that the Nexus, and its devastating power, was gone forever. Now, the galaxy would be free to rebuild, but the question remained, would humanity learn from this victory, or would they one day repeat the cycle of destruction that had almost consumed them all? Only time would tell. The battle for the Nexus had ended, but the repercussions were far from over. The galaxy, once defined by the iron grip of the Galactic Empire, now stood at a crossroads. Humanity had emerged victorious, but the cost was high. The destruction of the Nexus had forever altered the fabric of space-time, and its ramifications were still unfolding. For many, this was a moment of triumph, but for others, it was the beginning of a new and uncertain chapter. The humans, though victorious, were divided. The destruction of the Nexus had come with a heavy price. Those who had pushed for its destruction believed they had saved the galaxy from unimaginable chaos, but the cost of that decision was yet to be fully realized. The Nexus had been more than just a weapon, it was a symbol of the unknown, a force that defied comprehension. By destroying it, humanity had ensured that no one, not even the most powerful empire in the galaxy, could use it for their own ends. But in doing so, they had severed any possibility of unlocking its true potential. Was this victory or a tragedy? As the remnants of the human fleet returned to known space, the galaxy began to stir. Old alliances were tested, and new power structures began to emerge from the ashes of the Empire. Some factions within humanity began to question whether the destruction of the Nexus had been the right decision. In the face of an uncertain future, many leaders began to scramble for control, each vying for a piece of the galaxy's future. The rebel factions, once scattered and divided, now found themselves in a position of unprecedented power. The destruction of the Empire had created a power vacuum, and many of these factions were quick to fill it. While some sought peace and stability, others saw this as an opportunity to seize control and impose their own vision of order on the galaxy. The fractured state of humanity now mirrored the fractured state of the galaxy itself. In the core worlds, those who had once been oppressed under the Empire's rule found themselves grappling with a new set of challenges. Though free from the shackles of Imperial rule, they were not yet free from the specter of war. The destruction of the Nexus had brought an end to the war between the Empire and the humans, but it had also left behind a power vacuum that no one could fill without conflict. For many of these newly liberated worlds, the absence of a central governing force was both a blessing and a curse. Some sought to rebuild, to create a new government that could bring order to the chaos. Others saw this as an opportunity to establish new empires, this time built on human principles rather than imperial tyranny. The leaders of these worlds had differing views on the future. Some believed that the galaxy needed unity, that only through cooperation could humanity hope to survive in the post-imperial era. They advocated for a federation of planets, a system where each world could retain its sovereignty but work together to ensure peace and stability. Others, however, believed that humanity's strength lay in its individualism. They argued that each world should be free to chart its own course, and that any attempt at centralization would only lead to tyranny and oppression. In the aftermath of the Nexus's destruction, one thing became clear: humanity had to learn to govern itself. The old structures of power had crumbled, and there was no longer an overarching authority to dictate the galaxy's direction. The remnants of the Imperial fleet, once an unstoppable force, were now little more than a shadow of their former selves. Some commanders, disillusioned by the collapse of the Empire, sought to carve out their own domains, while others surrendered to the new order, hoping to secure a place in the new galaxy. The human leaders were forced to contend with the stark reality: the future of the galaxy was now in their hands. The choices they made in the coming years would shape the galaxy for generations to come. There was no going back, no undoing the destruction of the Nexus. What remained was the question of what to do with the power they had gained, and the responsibility that came with it. The protagonist, once a commander at the heart of humanity's fleet, now found themselves in a new role, a leader of a fractured people. They had led humanity to victory, but now they were faced with the daunting task of ensuring that the victory didn't turn into a new form of tyranny. Their thoughts were heavy with the knowledge that the destruction of the Nexus had been a necessary sacrifice, but it had also created new uncertainties. What now? What would humanity do with this newfound freedom? Some argued for a new kind of order, one based on the principles of democracy and mutual respect. They believed that the galaxy needed a fresh start, and that humanity could build something better from the ashes of the old. They envisioned a future where humanity worked together, not as empires, but as a collective of free worlds united by a common purpose. This was the idealist's vision, the hope that humanity, having overthrown the Empire, would now learn from its past mistakes and build a brighter future. Others, however, were more cynical. They believed that the only way to ensure humanity's survival was through strength and control. They saw the destruction of the Nexus as a necessary act, but one that had left a dangerous power vacuum in its wake. In their eyes, only through force could humanity maintain order. They argued that the galaxy needed strong leadership, and that it was up to them to seize that mantle. The human commander, ever the pragmatist, knew that the galaxy would not be rebuilt in one day. The destruction of the Nexus, though necessary, had left a gaping hole in the galaxy's future. It was up to the leaders of humanity to decide what came next, whether they would be the architects of a new empire or the builders of a truly free galaxy. The future was uncertain, and every decision now carried immense weight. In the days that followed the battle for the Nexus, humanity's leaders met in secret to discuss the way forward. The galaxy was in ruins, but it was not beyond repair. There were still worlds to rebuild, still people to govern, and still ideals to preserve. The question was no longer about defeating the Empire. It was about ensuring that the mistakes of the past were not repeated. The stakes had changed. The galaxy's future depended on whether humanity could rise above its flaws, rise above its need for power and control, and find a way to forge a new path. The galaxy was not a blank slate, it was a wounded world, and it would require care, wisdom, and patience to heal. Only time would tell if humanity was up to the task.